Hey, welcome back to Transform Your Workplace. This is the show where we explore ideas, leadership principles, and workplace strategies that help people thrive and help organizations create cultures where people want to be. Whether you're a business leader or an HR professional or someone who just wants to build better places to work, you're in the right spot. Before we jump into today's episode, a quick thanks to our sponsor, Xenium HR. If you're looking to grow your people and strengthen your culture, you've got to check out Xenium's learning and development programs. From virtual workshops and on-demand training to custom leadership development cohorts, Xenium helps you develop the kind of people-first leaders who can transform your workplace from the inside out. Learn more at xeniumhr.com. All right, today's episode is one I've been looking forward to releasing. I'm joined by Kathy Thorpe, CEO of Nurse Next Door and the author of the book Bold Kindness, A Caring, More Compassionate Way to Lead. This conversation hit home for me. Kathy really challenged some of the most outdated leadership norms, fear-based management, rigid hierarchy, and micromanagement, and offers a vision of what's possible when we lead with compassion, trust, and boldness. Here's some of what you're going to hear in the conversation with Kathy. We talk about what bold kindness looks like in action and why it's not soft leadership. How Nurse Next Door eliminated traditional managers and built a self-led culture. Why vulnerability, curiosity, and autonomy are at the heart of modern leadership. And why performance reviews may actually hold people back from doing their best work. Kathy also shares her personal story of leading through grief, building connection from the CEO's couch, and redefining success on her own terms. This conversation is powerful, human, and deeply practical for leaders who want to do things differently. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Kathy Thorpe. Kathy, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk about your book, Bold Kindness, A Caring, More Compassionate Way to Lead. Who doesn't want that, right? How did you come up with this idea for the book?
Well, I would say the journey's really been, throughout my work days and just my own leadership journey and going through the experiences of, having great bosses and having not great bosses, and even myself learning how to become a better leader over the years. And really the culmination of all of those things, and then starting my role here at Nurse Next Door as CEO 11 years ago, and really thinking thoughtfully about the type of culture and place that I wanted people to be able to come to work every day. And, Bold Kindness has, it was iterations and lots of, things that we tried, and Bold Kindness has really come from that.
There's a quote I loved in the book. You kind of start out by saying, imagine a workplace where people can be themselves, where there aren't hierarchies or power dynamics, end quote. So you open it up with this kind of vivid picture of what work could feel like. Do you think every organization could achieve this?
Yeah, I absolutely think every organization can achieve this. And I do think that that's where people are moving organizations to. I think, especially coming out of COVID, there's a need for the workplace to change to keep up with where people are going.
Yeah, I so agree with that. I think there is maybe coming from the younger generation or this new band of leaders, but I think the change it's happening and people want this.
It is happening and it's getting faster and faster. And yeah, the younger generations, and quite frankly, even my generation, we're just not going to do it anymore.
When you talk about bold kindness, as you state in the book, like what does that mean to you? Like if you have a definition or what it looks like in practice, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so bold is caring deeply about someone's development and having conversations that helps them to become better at what they're doing. And the reason I say it that way is because I think when you have an intention in any conversation to help someone get better, you find the right words and tone that allows that person to hear whatever the feedback is. And for me, kindness is really about understanding who that person is as a person and being in a relationship with that individual so that you know how to give them feedback in a way that they can hear and be excited about and feel like you are there to support them and their journey and their career journey.
If you think about the leaders in organizations who aren't behaving in this way, what do you think's holding them back from making this change to bold kindness?
I think where I've gotten to is I just have to keep working on myself, right? Like I just have to continue to be curious, to be a learner, to step into what makes me uncomfortable. And I know that when I do that, I become a stronger leader. And I think if you spend all your time looking at others and figuring out what they need to do better, I think your approach is going to come across in a much different way than if you're always looking internally.
You said in the book that this mission of around bold kindness largely came from wanting something better for your kids. Do you remember like a moment or a time in your life where you really wanted to make the change the way you lead at work?
Yeah, I think for me, it's sitting in that space of where do I want to work? How do I want to feel? What is that energy that is created in a workplace that feels really great? And it has actually amazed me. You can be so bold and have a culture that is truly there to engage people and get them excited about their job. And it continues to amaze me that if you just keep focusing on how great the culture is, your results happen. And I think when I think of my kids, it's just like I don't want them to feel the way that I felt in my early years of my career. And I think, quite frankly, they're not willing to put up with that.
In the book you wrote, it's time to work like we're not afraid to get fired. And I think, decades ago, maybe even a decade ago, this was kind of the norm. I think there was fear-based leadership practices all throughout organizations. And, for those that maybe are still using these tactics, what are some ways to unlearn some of those behaviors?
That's a good question. We have, as leaders, we have no right to control others. And I think when you are trying to control another individual, you just can't do that anymore. And I think it's thinking through how do you have conversations so that person can understand what you're thinking? How do you give that person space that they can do a great job and feel not intimidated by that? That's where people should get excited when others are making decisions, when they don't need you, that they are going to try something and you don't have to know everything. I think it's that we can't control people. And I think so much of how we were taught to be great leaders is really starting from the premise of control.
You wrote in the book about happier aging, and it rests on choice, purpose, belonging, respect, and autonomy. How did these 5 principles change the way Nurse Next Door just operates day to day?
Well, we start with being self-led. The whole concept of manager, it was probably about 8 years ago that I'm like, I don't want that role in this organization, because I truly believe that when a person is self-led, you show up as an adult. You know when you have to get to work. You know what your job is. You know how to ask for help if you need it. You know how to go after things and do a great job. You don't have to have a manager behind you telling you those things. When you have this environment and you have self-led people, you can give them that autonomy. They can have that space and that freedom. And I truly believe that that's where innovation happens, because someone is not afraid to take a chance, to make a decision, and beautiful things come from that. And I think that innovation is that. It's progressing the organization forward and trying new things and seeing what comes from it. Some things are going to work, some things aren't going to work, and that's it. It's not bigger than that.
I'd love to hear more about the self-led model. Is it completely removing a middle management layer? Is there any sort of hierarchy in the organization? How does that work?
Yeah, yes, we have titles, because I'd love to not ever have titles, but we are still part of the world and the business community. So yes, we have titles, but I would say that the leadership team, it's more about mentoring, right? Like, so it's more about the mindset of how we work together. And I have a team that is much smarter than I am at what they do. And so I'm not there to tell them what to do. I'm there to support them when they need support. And I would say that that's how we work together. And that's how we have created this culture where it's Kathy, it's not the CEO Kathy.
In the book you wrote, we have to think big to go big. Business grows on the calculated risks that we take, end quote. And I think when you push your team to taking those sorts of risks and big bets, what kind of guardrails or feedback loops keep them from, they can still take risks and take bold risks, but never in a reckless or negligent manner? How do you do that?
Yeah, so this is where we always say, how do you 10x the business? To really go to a 10x place, you have to actually do things differently than how you're currently doing it. Then you can, okay, what would 10x look like? What are those results that would be achieved if we were 10xing the business? And then you can start to see the path to get there. And I think it's when you create that path that it's the steps to get there. And I think that people will stay within what's good for the company because they can see the path. And it's not just about that end number, but it's about the steps taken to get there. It's this concept of, we call it continuous improvement. Like, you're never there. The company's never there. We're constantly looking for continuous improvement. And that's where you can see the path and you take the chances and you stay within the guardrails because we're working together as a team and people aren't off in silos making these decisions alone.
We're never perfect. Like, we're striving for perfection, but we're never going to get there. But it's a journey and we're doing this together.
Exactly. It is a journey. And that, we always say, like, if something's not working, it's like, oh, that's awesome. Because imagine we got here and look at, that's not working. So imagine when we fix it, what we can actually achieve. And so we get excited about those moments. And I think so many times in companies, you have a system or a process, and people are so afraid to go back and look at it and change it because, well, it's change, or it's this mindset that, well, no, it's set, so we can't look at it from a different perspective. And it's like, well, no, the organization continues to evolve and grow and get bigger. And those systems and processes are going to absolutely need to get repotted at some point.
In the book, you like vividly paint the picture of this couch in your office and just how it's kind of a symbol for like dropping titles and talking like human to human. And it's funny, I visualized it and I'm actually seeing it here right now. You're sitting on the couch and it is amazing how comfortable it makes somebody feel when you're sitting on the couch, whether it's virtual like this or face-to-face. What has that done for you in your relationships with leaders, employees inside your company?
I would say that I've been able to develop great relationships because of it. It's humility for me. I think it is important that Kathy is always here beside people.
Yeah, that's well said. It's like, you're at the top, but being accessible and being at everybody else's level as a human, that goes a long way in building relationships.
Listen, at the end of the day, we are all just human, and we're human together, and we're in this together, and no one is more important than anyone else. That's a very big piece of this culture, and it's what I love about this culture.
You talk about how vulnerability is really a critical component to being a bold, kind leader. And I want to know what that looks like for you and your team, and just how you see that show up in some of the best bold, kind leaders you've seen.
Yeah, so like vulnerability, for me, it's allowing people to be their full selves at work. We all go through things. We have good days, we have bad days. We all go through things in life. And if people aren't able to come to work with those things and be able to talk about those things, that to me is just, you're never going to find happiness and joy in the workplace if you're coming to work and not even being who you are. And for me, it struck me in a large way. It was during COVID, and my late husband, Harry, had been diagnosed with cancer. It was a 2-year journey of him being sick, and he did pass away just over 4 years ago. And I went through that journey with this organization. And I made the choice to come to work and talk about it and be present with it and talk about the things that you don't always hear in the workplace. And what I learned from it is, wow, when you can create that level of vulnerability and openness, people really feel deeply connected to the organization because they can bring their whole selves to work and be fully present. Another thing I would also add, like we talk a lot about bold dreams and goals here at Nurse Next Door, and how do we make sure that we know what our own bold dreams and goals are so that we can continue to, go after them and thrive and feel like we're really moving our life forward.
I'm so sorry. That must have been very difficult. And the fact that you're able to show up at work and bring people along that journey with you probably had tremendous influence around vulnerability inside your organization. So I commend you for that. Couldn't even imagine how hard that must have been. You wrote about being curious and not staying stuck in your ways and just opening up to possibilities. What are some ways that you stay curious and try to instill that in your team as well?
I think it's about asking questions and challenging an idea and wanting people to not take the first answer, but to embrace that feeling of, let's talk about this. Is there a different perspective that we could be looking at? And just and creating that space where it might not be the first answer. And I think curiosity allows for some really great conversations about things.
I imagine, in leading an organization like yours through the pandemic, you probably had to get really curious about ways in which you operated. Do you remember some of those times of just having to really think outside the box with how you're going to support your people?
Oh, sorry, I'm going to add in too. When I think about curious, I think it's when you don't take anything personally, right? Like, I think that it's hard to be curious when you're getting defensive and taking something personally. But when you're removed from that personal feeling, it's like, oh, okay, like this is a thing. It's a thing over here, and let's be curious about solving it. During COVID, oh my gosh, yes, we had to get very curious about many things. And I'll give one example. We used to have, when we sell franchises, we used to have that individual or individuals come here to Vancouver and spend the day with us. So obviously COVID, and all of a sudden, okay, no one can travel. And literally we're like, okay, how are we ever going to sell a franchise again? And then it was like this whole journey of videos and spending the day with them with the TV. And wow, we still do it today. We actually don't have people come in because, people were spending 3 days doing something where they had to travel, spend the day with us, travel back, spend a lot of money. Whereas now they can, be in their homes and spend the day with us. And it's just moved us in completely different ways through COVID, through, those learnings, and just continuing to look and say, how can we do things differently? I think COVID was so awesome for that.
You're right. It did push people in ways that made us uncomfortable, but we had no choice. We had to find a solution. And so
no choice. Absolutely. And just even the way we work. And, I know for myself, before COVID, I was absolutely caught up in this whole, being in the office 9 to 5. And that had been my whole career. And I sit here today and it's like, I feel much more connected with my full life because I don't have this guilt where I'm supposed to be sitting here on this couch. If I've done the stuff I'm here to do, then I don't need to sit on the couch. I can go and I can go for a walk. I can have my full life.
I so agree with you on that because going through the pandemic where we realized how much life we were kind of giving up by sitting in the office 9 to 5. And I'm seeing a huge shift. I do an employee survey every year across many employers, and flexibility is at the top of the list in terms of a perk and why people stay at an organization. Are you seeing that as well? Like flexibility and just being able to experience life and work kind of like blended perfectly together?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think it is so individual. Like, as an organization, it's not like we have this plan or approach. It really is about what's important to you as a person, and you have to figure out how you want your life to work and then do it. And let's all embrace that and get excited about people finding their full selves in their life. And I just think, wow, that has been a massive shift coming out of COVID.
When you think about the bold, kind leader, what are some of those unconventional skills that these types of leaders have?
I think you absolutely need to feel comfortable giving someone feedback and doing it in that way that cares for their heart. And I think that that's not the typical leadership style that people learn. When someone can get to that place where they're giving that feedback in a kind, caring way, it can really help move the organization fast because you're giving feedback in real time, and that individual is going to learn from it and be able to move forward and get things going even faster.
I'm glad you said that, because one of my questions I had for you later on was about performance reviews and what your take on it is in a self-led model specifically. And a lot of organizations are talking about, like, are performance reviews valuable? Like, should we scrap them all together? Same with like 360 reviews. Whereas, like, good performance management from a bold kind leader probably gives feedback in the moment. What's your take on performance management as a whole?
Well, we got rid of them.
Did you
about
really?
8 years ago. Yes. The only thing we do is we sit down with everyone and go through being self-led once a quarter and just talk about it and just see where, that person's at in their head about feeling self-led, where they want to work on, what do they want to do better. And we leave it at that. And otherwise, we're giving feedback in the moment and helping people to develop every day.
There was a section in the book that I love. It was 10 things that require zero talent. Can you share a few of those and just why you think it's so important to being a bold, kind leader?
Yeah, well, this goes back to showing up, being at work on time. And, do you know what you're working on? Are you working well with others? And it really is all of those pieces that are so, we just don't talk about those things enough. If everyone just holds their own selves accountable to those types of things, then that's why we got rid of managers.
One of the first books I read out of college was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And there's so many simple ideas in that book that require zero talent, zero money. You're like smiling, saying somebody's name, saying, please and thank yous, and just, asking questions of people. Like, these things requires no talent, and it can make all the difference in how you lead people or how you build relationships. I imagine that some of those things that you talked about in the book cover what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's how, and we all know these things. We grew up with them, and I think it's just, let's hold people accountable to that. And I think that that's being self-led. That's really where self-led has come from.
You said that the only way to get profits and success is by paying people extremely well. What is your philosophy on compensation and just how you go about that?
I definitely believe in paying people well. I don't look at it from the standpoint of, oh, they're a director, as an example, therefore they're in this pay grade or this pay range. We absolutely look at it from what that individual is contributing to the organization. And yeah, I've made some different decisions accordingly. And I think that that's the way it should be. And I think we need to get away from this, titles and salary within those titles.
Kathy, if you look a decade out, people have taken these ideas from the book about bold kindness and this self-led model. What kind of future are we looking at?
I think we're looking at a future that they feel like they have agency over their own life. And I think that we're just going to have this place where work and life just flow. I think there's going to be a lot more flow. I think that, they talk about the gig economy and how everyone wants to be doing their own thing. I think that internally in organizations, it's going to feel that people are doing their own thing.
Kathy, this is a fun discussion. I learned a lot from you and reading the book too. And It's just a fun discussion. Where can people learn more about you, connect with you, get your book, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, so the book is called Bold Kindness by Kathy Thorpe. And, I think that I've gotten a lot of great feedback in how it's really helped people in their leadership and the culture that they're creating in an organization. And yeah, let's just help move the business community forward and get people working in environments that they love and cultures that they love.
My guest today has been Kathy Thorpe, the president and CEO of Nurse Next Door and the author of Bold Kindness, a caring, more compassionate way to lead. Kathy, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.